Voila, here we go.
Hello, hello. We are here. So, another podcast, another week in Crazy Town. I don't know what to call it.
Crazy Town?
So, our last conversation was super emotional, very important, and something, social justice movement. There's lots of them out there, but specifically we were talking about Black Lives Matter and the murder of George Floyd and what that, the art that came about from that and how art can help move that social justice movement forward. And sprinkled in there, we were talking about that art is sort of this bridge. And that, that possibly maybe it could shift the conversation into something more positive. And so this week, let's talk about the question, can art change the world in a positive way?
Well, I think it has, and I think it always has. Do you know what I mean? I think that's one of art's superpowers. It does transform. It's an engineer. It's a catalyst for transformation. I'd like to really kind of focus on the murals that are being created. So in downtown Santa Monica, we had the peaceful protests. Then there was a huge looting. A lot of buildings were set on fire. Everything's boarded up there. And the artists came in and they started creating murals. And the one that I thought was really hit me, wow, this is huge. It had a hand and it said, there was the plague, and after that, there was the Renaissance. So there's two hands, so the plague, and then all of a sudden the blossoming of the Renaissance. And a friend of mine didn't understand what that meant, but for me, what it means is the Renaissance was a time after the plague, the medieval times where everybody was there was the plague and there was death and, misery. The Renaissance was where there was new paradigm, new ideas, art was created, art became the spokesperson for the new era. So that, to me, if that makes sense, is really the power of art. It is the Renaissance, and I think we're at the precipice of a Renaissance that's happening. And just seeing the art on boarded up, burned down buildings is
right.
Such a transformation. It's kind of like the Phoenix Rising archetype in a way.
Yeah. I know. I have a question for you. What do you think draws people to do that? Why not leave the boards the way they are? Why paint over them?
Yeah, I think it is our soul. I think it's a human instinct and also something higher, that we have some higher power within us that wants us to transform and wants us to evolve and create a new, better world. It's like, I can't imagine, it's almost like an artist saw that it's a blank canvas instead of a boarded up wall. And they wanted to create their vision and they wanted to share with the world their vision. And I think a lot of artists want to inspire people. They want to inspire people to grow and to make this world a better place. And for me, all the artists that were creating, there was even one that, lots of love, all these, very, just like the sidewalk chalk that we had spoke about, which is so amazing, that it was popping up by random strangers everywhere. I think people, they want to inspire, and people really have an instinct for change and transformation. They don't want to live in hell. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If that answers your question.
Yeah. So I think that I was thinking about that, why, because I read about a Portland store owner, and this was actually at the beginning of COVID-19. It wasn't because of any looting. It was just they boarded up their restaurant because they were going to have to close for who knows how long. And the owner happened to be a mural artist and kind of went through the same thought process that you just suggested of saying, it was a bunch of wood, and I thought that maybe my neighborhood would want to see something different than a boarded up restaurant. Maybe they'd want to see almost like a gallery on their street side. And I think that you're talking about this quite a bit, where you're constantly looking for the beauty. You know, that to me is very similar to looking for the light in the darkness. That's sort of what a photographer does, right? As a photographer, I'm constantly looking for the light and the dark and how they play together. And I think that symbolically you could say that we are dealing with that right now, is that we are in a whole bunch of darkness for lots and lots of different reasons, and that artist is looking for the light. That's, to me, that's those hands, right? Is that you could focus on the plague if you wanted to, right, but don't remember that, you know, when a tree burns down, it's not the end of the tree.
Right.
This amazing thing that happens biologically, and you know, the fungi come and they eat it, and they, you know, there are beings that thrive on death. I mean, that sounds weird and morbid, but it's a cycle. It really is a cycle. And from, you know, from darkness, you do get light. And I think people want to like share the light, or I don't know, maybe they do it like, I feel like for my process, maybe I use other people as an excuse because it's probably self-serving.
Mm-hmm.
And then I feel good because I know that, I hope that it helps someone else in a way. But it's also, we know that when you take an art break, you feel better. And so it's almost like it's double serving. It's serving yourself and it's serving your community. And hopefully it's serving the future. And that's what I think that the question, you know, how can art change the world in a positive way? So I think if you imagine, if we're going to talk about these murals that popped up, if you imagine a boarded up downtown Santa Monica, or a boarded up downtown almost anywhere right now that had nothing except blankness, right? How different that would feel.
Yeah.
As opposed to a street that has essentially been turned into an art gallery.
Yeah.
And we know that, you know, science shows that if you visit an art gallery for 45 minutes, it enhances your mood. And so there's definitely a difference, I think.
Yeah. And it brings up to me, like, it's been kind of mainstream that art doesn't matter, you know, it's out of schools and things like that. And it's been really on a rough ride, art, you know, in terms of like being part of everybody's lives, you know? So yeah. I think it's almost like art right now at this time of chaos becomes an anchor for people, and it reminds them that art is important. It's almost like our society got whitewashed almost, you know what I mean? The art's not important, you know what I mean? Although science said it's important, you know what I mean? And so it's like something happened to our society where art really got like, it's just for a few people, you know what I mean? And really, I think it's almost like a reclamation and an anchoring, like it's back, you know, art is back. I mean, if you think about, if you just look at that as a metaphor, you have a boarded up, burned down building, and what happens? People want to create it into beauty. I mean,
right.
That's
literally the first thing that people do, that almost everybody does.
Right.
Is they attempt to turn it into something more pleasant to look at, or
meaningful. Like, you know, there's a lot of George Floyd faces down there and other faces, and you know, there's even like one where it's like don't shoot, and there's these red bodies with their hands up. So it's also talking about the dynamic chaos that's happening right now, you know, the violence. So it's not all, you know, roses.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's almost like a platform, right? And I want to speak to it in terms of living in the middle of a pandemic, you know, like, so do you think it would be more, is it like, I have a sense that it's more prevalent, this sort of, you know, you're seeing a lot of people trying to spread words of, you know, positive words, but I also think a lot of people are trying to grab people's attention in terms of the don't shoot and all of the George Floyd murals and the I can't breathe and say their name. And it's because although there are protests, maybe they're not as large as they could be because a lot of people have to stay home or are choosing to stay home. And so it's almost like they're like permanent reminders of the movement.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know, because I'm just in my brain trying to think back to other protests in the past, and were there permanent reminders of those protests after the protests ended? And I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. I'm just sort of processing that in my brain. But right now I feel like it's almost like there are, because of so many things, because of the looting, and then they were boarded up and then they were turned into murals. But things were also already boarded up before the protesting started because of the pandemic. So it's just this weird relationship going on, you know.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you were speaking, it kind of brought up the paradox of the statues of Confederate generals are being toppled, right? And that is a marker, that is an art form, that is a marker of something really dark, right? That was there, and now people are like, no. So it's interesting that the kind of like, I don't know if it's a paradox, but here you have these symbols and they're art forms, right? And they're being toppled, and then you have these transitory, like I think they're transitory, these these pop-up galleries. So it's fascinating what art, like art has a really strong role in the time right now, and I think art always has a really strong role in times of upheaval.
Yes. Yeah. So how, so I really want to dig into the question a little bit more about, like, so we talked about the fact that a storefront with a mural on it, as opposed to being blank, sort of introduces more beauty into the world, as opposed to just kind of sadness, maybe. And then it's also a platform for expression,
right,
which is people expressing their anger, their sadness, mourning over the murder of George Floyd and the continuous police brutality that
I just want to say something. I had a hit. It's the artist, it's an individual doing the mural, but it becomes a collective message, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So like, for example, the one about the plague and the Renaissance, that speaks to everybody, most people. So it's like an individual's making it, but then the symbol, the art becomes a collective, a universal message, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I guess I want to really hit on, why is it a positive way, or do we know it's a positive way?
What, making art?
Well, yeah. So if we're going to talk about these storefront murals as impacting the world in a positive way, I guess I'm trying to do the bullet points of how, right? So they're adding beauty to a neighborhood that has otherwise been disheveled. They're offering an opportunity for a person to express themselves. And we know that it's better to express yourself than not express yourself. Otherwise, you're going to blow up inside, or you're going to do something detrimental, right? And that's what art allows you to do. It allows you to express yourself in order to heal in a way, or process something that you might not fully understand, or you fully understand and just need to get out there. And I also think it's a way of communicating with your community. And that's where, to me, where the pandemic comes in, because you're not having coffee with your neighbor right now and being like, oh my gosh, can you did you see what happened? And you're not being able to process that through conversation. So it's almost like this back and forth conversation through murals.
It's also, think about the billboards and advertising, and I forgot what the data says, but we see like 60,000 images a day, or something like that. So it's imagery too, and that's the power of it. It's like it's a message, it's meaning, it's beauty, it's transformation, it's hope. And I think also what primal, kind of a primal thought. Destruction. You were talking about the tree, and I know the trees they die, then become like nurseries for new life. And
Right.
it's almost like the art is becoming a nursery for new ideas, new life,
Mm.
new transformation. That's what it means. I mean, it would be like, just, I guess we could think about it like, what if it did, you keep on referring to that, but what if it didn't exist? What if someone didn't want to do that? What if we just lived in a boarded up, sterile, we were all in white suits with masks on, like what would life, that would be dystopia, right?
I mean, that's a possibility.
Yeah.
I think that because, I love you have always have such an optimistic idea, and I love it. You're such an idealist, and I really admire that about you, because I actually don't think that people will appreciate art more now. Because there was a poll, I should find it, in a newspaper. Have you seen this poll? About essential workers versus non-essential workers, and artists are considered non-essential at the top of the non-essential worker list.
Wow.
And I would argue, thank you very much, that art has probably become one of the most important things.
It's essential, yeah.
In the last 4 months.
Yeah.
Because, pardon me, how many people are, Netflixing and chilling every single night? And yeah, what would your neighborhood look like if artists decided to not come out and decorate up the boarded neighborhoods? Or, how much better was your walk in the morning when you saw that drawing on the sidewalk? How much better are your children doing because you are giving them a piece of paper and a pen, or letting them make mud pie, or do an obstacle course? How much, and I don't know. Maybe I'm feeling optimistic today. But
I have a question for you. Like, why? It's obvious. It's obviously the art has become intrinsic in people's lives. Maybe drawing on the sidewalk. You know what I mean? It's become in our quarantine space. It's become part of people's lives, right? Why? Who is telling us that it's not essential? That's what I'm calling, like, who? Like, who's the who that says it's not essential?
Yeah, I guess and I would like to know, I'll have to dig a little bit deeper. Obviously, it hit me at a guttural level when I said it, and I was just like, geez, okay, I guess not. Because, I mean, like answering the question, how can art change the world in a positive way, seems silly for you and me to answer, because we know that it does. I mean, it does it on an individual basis. You can change the world one artwork at a time. If one person that hasn't made art before sits down and makes art, they're going to be better. They're going to be better. And then because they're better, the world will be better. It's really easy math to do. And I don't understand. I don't really understand why there is this push that art is not essential, when it is literally part of absolutely everything you do. The house you live in is because of art. I mean, there's art in the word architecture. I just don't even, I mean, and the bed that I'm sitting on right now to have this conversation has a bed sheet on it that a designer had to design, and they had to decide on the color. And I guess I could go on and on and on. And I don't understand how people don't understand, but I want them to understand. Obviously, that's why you and I exist, because we're trying to get people who are like that. We're trying to get the people that said that art is non-essential to understand how essential it is to them, to their well-being.
So that's a beautiful, I mean, obviously that is our mission. Art, maybe that is what we need to really expand our message, that art is essential. Maybe that's our tagline. Art is essential.
It is.
And maybe that's it.
You don't even need to say especially right now, because it's not especially right now all the time. But maybe people are realizing how essential it is right now. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I'd love to maybe we should put our own poll out there. Like,
yeah, we should, because Yeah, that's a fascinating question because, like, yeah, I don't know how to answer that because, right, I don't understand it. like,
Yeah.
why would
Well, I mean,
somebody?
yeah, you remember when we first started talking about, right, this was back in March and April when we started asking people, what happens to art during the time of crisis? And a lot of artists were hopeful, like you, that people would sort of garner a more of appreciation for the arts and realize how essential it is for your mental well-being.
Yeah.
Because if art's going to do anything during a pandemic and a world that somewhat seems like it's unraveling, art's going to be the one thing that does that for you. And how does it do that? So I guess we can continue to answer this question of how it does it. And this is why art changes the world in a positive way. Because when you feel like the world is just spiraling out of control, right? What's the one thing that you can do right then and there that will help? You can grab a piece of paper and you can grab a pen because you're probably going to always have those things.
Mm-hmm.
And you can express yourself, and that's art.
Yeah.
That is dealing with your emotions in a positive way, right? And I think that art is, and I know that people don't think this, and I'm trying to help them learn this. Art is the easiest way to do that, right? It's the easiest way. It probably seems like the hardest way for a lot of people. But I'm not saying you have to draw the Mona Lisa or design the Statue of Liberty or I don't know what other thing you want to talk about. But you can just draw a spiral. If you feel like the world is spiraling out of control, draw a spiral and just honestly do it and then check in with yourself in about 10 minutes, right?
Well, I
Because
think for me as the teacher in me knows that when you draw or you create art, you're creating, you're not destroying, right? So if you feel like, you look at the news, you don't know what the hell's going on, do you know what I mean? You don't know about your job, you don't know about what your family, you know what I mean? It's all like, I have no idea what's going on. If you draw, if you take a pen and a piece of paper, you are in control and you're creating your own reality. So it's almost like I talked about an anchor again. I think art is an anchor. It anchors you into yourself. And I think also there's a couple things that come up. It's like when you create, it's you that are creating. It's no one else can create it except for you. So that is amazing. And it really honors yourself as an individual. And so why not honor yourself as an individual? I think a lot of times people are fearful of really revealing who they are, right?
Right.
I mean, that's part of that.
That's probably where, that's right. Why is art so scary? We talked about that in like our 5th episode. That's what it stems from.
Yeah, it's like no one can create anything alike and nothing is ever wrong. And it's like you have the power to take control, start creating a spiral, thinking about it. And it's also, we know it's a physical response too. This action, your hands are like, I read somewhere, your hands are like, they're like, in terms of meridians, in terms of Chinese medicine, they're like all your body, they're your whole body. So when you're creating, I'm sure there's science on this, you're releasing energy from stuck information. And that's the whole thing. It's like for me, you really have to look at art not as just a pretty picture, but as a tool for transformation. It is our tool. And I mean, I would say, look at your hands. These can create things, and I think, it's easy to go, oh my God, the world's just, I don't know, the world's hell in a handbasket, right? Like, what do I do? But you have these hands and you can create.
You can do something. Yeah, and I like that because it's I think that's what's so great about it. Okay, so how can art change the world in a positive way? Well, when you look at it, right, when it's out in the public, which is what's happening on all these storefronts and these murals, it's having a positive impact because it's not only helping those individuals, right, that are getting to express themselves, but it's pushing a social justice movement the correct direction, in the
Right.
positive direction, by creating a statement or a symbol that can be carried into the future to
Right.
create positive change, at the same time as it's changing the visualness or the look of a neighborhood, from being destroyed into being alive and beautiful again. And then on the individual level, art can change you in a positive way by turning the spiral that's in your head into going through your hands and into a spiral that you can control, that you have ownership over, right? It's almost like taking that chaos that's in here and then and almost controlling it and reminding yourself that you can do this. So it's almost like, yeah. So it's, and then that obviously, in my mind, when you change the individual, you change the world. That's
Absolutely. Yeah. And
my whole deal.
I mean, that's the whole thing about art, is like, it's also, we talked about art as self-care, art as self-love. It's really like an essential self-care tool.
Yeah.
And when you care, when you take care of yourself, when you love yourself, then yes, you can transform the world. There's no way that you can dislike yourself, and change the world, right?
No, right. Yeah. No, yeah. Yeah. The power to make positive change starts within, for sure. I love that dialogue that's going around. I'll have to share it. It's from this poet named Cleo Wade, and it's basically like, I'm going to totally butcher it right now, but like, what can I do now to be anti-racist? And it's like, you can have conversations at your dinner table. You can do, and it's basically sending the message out that it starts here. It starts with yourself, and then it starts with your family, and then it goes to your community, and then it goes to the world. And I love that process for people that might be feeling a little bit overwhelmed, like, I want to help, but I have no idea what to do. And then start here, and then start here, like you and I are, and then just kind of go from there.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay. Yeah. I feel better. I got a little down there because, man, I get bummed out because I think that, I mean, you and I have been talking about this for, who knows how long. How long have we known each other? And
a decade or so.
I mean, I know that we have created positive change in the world through our art projects and things like that. But boy, do I get bummed out when I hear, and I can't let one news story bum me out. But it did. It bummed me out because I was just like, give me a break. It kind of, actually, it really made me angry because I'm like,
I think what it is, it's a catalyst for us to like spread the message that art is essential, and that's our tagline right now.
Yeah, just another reminder that we need to. We need to get out there more and just, further our reach of our awareness campaign. That
I don't know who decided that art was non-essential. Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know who the who are, but they totally is it's a domination of our psyche that it's nonsensical. And it's like, even though people might go, oh, I like art is important, there's something in their heads that says, no, it's not. It's
right.
It's dominant force. It's like, no, it's just for a few
for
people.
Pleasure.
It's Don always says this, that artists are selfish. He jokes, but I mean, he feels that in somewhere, that art and artists are selfish. So that's a program.
And that says something to unpack. To unpack is like, are artists selfish? And I would argue, from my side, I don't really have another choice. I think a lot of people, if you actually sat down, who make art, they don't necessarily make it by choice. It's almost this thing that they have to do. I make some art by choice. I paint with my kids, and we draw on the sidewalk, and I consciously, take art breaks when I'm trying to encourage other people to do the same, through our various programs and stuff. But my own personal art is definitely not a choice. I have to do it. That's how I survive,
Well, I know. I mean, art saved my life. I always say that. It saved my life, and it saves people's lives.
Talk about art being essential, right?
Yeah, it saves your life.
My existence. Yeah. Yeah. All right. That's okay. This conversation, I got some pondering to do. That's a good question. I liked it.
I gotta ruminate a little bit on this one. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.